Good morning, and welcome to our continuing series, Interviews with Aurovillians. Today we're very pleased to have Andy with us.
Thank
Namaste,
you.
Andy.
It is very nice, and thanks for inviting me here. I'm really looking forward to this.
Good. I always begin with the question, how did you hear of Sri Aurobindo and Mother, and how did you hear of Oroville? Please enlighten us.
So,
You were one of the first to come.
yes,
One of the early ones.
really, I came in January 1974, and the answer to your question is not really so easy because my grandmother, who ended up, that is Frederick's mother, who ended up also living here, she had heard of Sri Aurobindo at a very early point.
In Germany?
In Germany. She lived in Switzerland, or spent quite a bit of time in Switzerland at that time, near the Lago Maggiore. And so through her, she had talked to my mother about this, and there were pictures of the mother in our house, particularly in my mother's bedroom, from as early really as I can remember. So I couldn't really put a time to it. Certainly, this took on more of a presence from the moment that Frederick had decided to come here and actually move to Pondicherry. There was not a regular exchange, but every now and then there was a letter or news from Frederick in Pondicherry, and we were, that was like part of our family universe, so to say.
How old were you at the time?
Maybe 13, 14.
Ah, so young.
And that continued. So Pondicherry, the ashram, Orville didn't exist then.
No.
Was definitely a known entity, and even though I didn't know much about it, to be honest. But what then took place was a period that must have been that was 1973, when my aunt Jana phoned me up out of the blue, really, and said, "Look, we're equipping a van, one of these Mercedes vans, with some spare parts and things, and we're planning to drive to India."
Oh, she was in Germany then?
She was in Germany then. We're planning to drive to India and leave the car with Frederick. He needs a car. They don't have good cars in India, she said. So I was in school at that time. I had 2 more years to go, or 1 more year, I forget now. I think 2. And she said, "So come along." And I said, "Look, I'm in school. I can't just, take a decision like that." But it kind of planted a seed, and there wasn't that much time. It was, I think the trip was planned 3 months later, or so. And I was 18 at that time, and somehow this thing worked in me, and it was the first time that I sort of took kind of stock of what was happening with me at that time, and I was in a confused state. I guess it has to do with age. I was in boarding school, and I wasn't doing well in school. I'd never really done well in school. Wasn't very happy there. But at the same time, there wasn't anything that I could really figure out. Like, where would I be happy? What was missing in my life? So I don't know. I guess there was at one point there was a kind of a sudden decision where I said, okay, I need a change. And why not take this opportunity? I wasn't thinking at all in terms of staying longer. I thought we'd drive down, spend 3 months or so, and then come back, and then see what I'm going to do with the rest of my life. Basically, that was the plan. So I called up my aunt. I said, all right, I'm coming along. Then obviously what followed was a sort of lengthy process of getting all the visas required for every country that we were passing through.
Oh, yes.
And yeah, that went actually more or less without any difficulty. And
well, it was a different world then.
it was a different world then, although there were conflicts. I think, Iran was basically Persia, as it was, I think, known then, was still ruled by the Shah. So, but that was just the end of it, of that period. But obviously there was the India-Pakistan conflict.
Yes.
That I think had already 3 years before that. I'm not good with my dates really, but the first Indo-Pakistan war had finished. It was very difficult to get visas for Pakistan and then move into India. The border was pretty much closed.
Oh.
So long story short, we started off. It was a more or less uneventful trip, quite nice really. I think it took us about 3 weeks or so. In Pakistan, in Afghanistan, we realized that we wouldn't get. We were 4 people in the van. There was my aunt, her son Robert, myself, and a friend of the family, of our family, and we wouldn't get visas for the 4 of us. Only 2 visas were issued, so we decided that my aunt and her son would drive the car from Kabul to Delhi, and my friend and I would fly to Delhi from Kabul and we all meet there.
Now, Robert is living with
Anne.
With Anne, his
No,
wife. Yes,
yeah.
I corresponded with her a lot.
Yeah, that's
years.
my cousin.
That's your cousin.
Yeah.
So you flew,
So I flew from Kabul.
and you didn't have to get a visa for Pakistan.
So I didn't get a visa for Pakistan. I've never been to Pakistan as a result. And Frederick met us in Delhi. He came up from Oroville and drove down with us. We made a bit of a detour, a bit of sightseeing. We went to the Ellora Ajanta caves, and so we didn't take the straight road down. And in sometime, and I don't know the exact date, but sometime in January 1974, we arrived in Orville. And
what was your feeling when you arrived?
That is hard to describe. I mean, it was like everything was so different from what I'd grown up in, the environment that I'd grown up in, that I was still dealing with India really, and but certainly I guess after these like 3 weeks or so on the road, it was a great sort of feeling to have arrived somewhere. And Oroville was very quiet. Obviously, at that time, there was very, very few people living there compared to today. Maybe 200 or so.
Yes.
In total, and everybody knew everybody, and very soon I knew everybody. And I was driving around with the van a lot at that time. In fact, Fred wanted me to, at one point we did, I think, trips to Chennai every 2 weeks or so. So I drove the van up to Chennai and back down again to get parts and
And
whatever.
whatever.
Yeah. Yeah. So
Where were you living?
I lived at first in Orson's home, um, uh, and then in Abri.
Workshop.
Yeah, there was the workshop, but there were a few rooms above what is now, I guess, the. It used to be the electrical service, and they had their spare parts and things at the ground floor, and I was living on the top floor, under an asbestos roof. It was hot as hell in the summer. You could barely kind of spend any time in the day there, but we were moving about, and in the evenings it was cool enough. So
Who was in Albury? You remember the people? Was Peter there?
Big Pete
Yeah, Big
may have already started his workshop then. I'm not sure. I don't. I don't think there was really that much activity there. There was a guy called Kanan living there with his family. He had a and his wife took very much care of me. She kept bringing me tea and soups, because she could see that I was a little bit lost there in the in the kind of strange environment, and that was a nice memory. And I met her over the years many times, and we had some very friendly contact. I can't tell you exactly what went on, but there was a workshop, and at one point Jack Alexander worked there also. So I don't know if Jack. I don't remember if Jack was there before Pete or Pete before Jack.
That's not so important.
But there was a workshop going on.
And what did you do after that?
Well, the first thing was, of course, I had to learn English. Didn't speak English well at that time. Just out of school. So one of the ways to do that was, for some reason, there was a huge stack of Marvel comics in Orson's home. I think Hero and Erissa had picked them up somewhere. So I went through that stack of Marvel comics. That was good. And then I started working quite soon in the bakery in Aspiration.
With Larry? With Larry?
No,
He had gone already?
Larry wasn't in the Aspiration Bakery. He had made his own bakery in Kodacry. But that came later.
Okay.
So I was working with Chris Gray and a guy called Mitch. And Mitch was also from America. They both had sort of hippie roots, which suited me well, because I was kind of a bit hippie-like then. Long hair and
we all were, Andy.
So they had been in Spain, in Formentera, and so they were a few years ahead of me. But I guess in the year and a half or 2 years that I worked with them, I learned English. So, all right, so that was the first step, and after that I'm pretty quickly migrated towards Matra Mandir.
And that's where I met you.
And that's where we met, because then I started working in the Matra Mandir gardens, and that's when I first met you, exactly.
Have you read much of Sri Aurobindo or Mother?
By now or then?
By now.
A lot.
A lot?
I would say, yes. I read a lot of Sri Aurobindo every day, really. And over the years, that basically means that I've read all his major works, except the plays and the poetry, with the exception, obviously, of Savitri, which I've read a few times. So what I do is I kind of circle through the ones that I really, how to say, that helped me a lot. At the moment, that is Letters on Yoga, really. So I go, yeah, when I finish, and that's like 3 volumes, and I start with the first one again.
They put a 4th volume out now.
Oh, really?
In the new edition, yeah.
Okay.
You see people pass away.
Yeah, and
the
they,
children don't have any interest in Sri Aurobindo Mother. They send all
they
the
send the
letters.
letters, yeah. So, okay, I didn't know.
Yeah.
It's expanding, huh?
It's
That's
expanding.
nice. That's
Yes,
good
it's
news.
very, very
Good news.
nice.
I really like these letters on you, because after a while, when you read through them, even though obviously you only read Sri Aurobindo's answers to the questions, but it's pretty obvious what the questions are, and you realize, for most of it, I could have asked these questions. So,
Yes.
no, really seriously. So
Yeah,
it's
absolutely.
basically as though there is a continuous sort of source of guidance available there, and very practical, and very kind of very much dealing with things that work in us and need answers. So for me, that's a very good tool.
Sometimes humorous too.
Yeah, and sometimes quite humorous. I just read a letter that I believe must have been to Dilip Kumar Roy. There's a certain tone that he uses when he writes to Dilip.
Yes.
And so he finishes off this letter, which is very long, several pages. He finishes off saying, "Grumble if you must, but persist."
Yeah. We've all been there.
Yeah. But yeah, obviously Savitri and the synthesis and Life Divine and these things are really a foundation for...
Can you talk a little bit about Matrimandia? I know it's gone through so many changes, and
Yeah.
and now they've asked me to be the chairman for the new 4 gardens.
Oh,
To
really?
make a decision.
Okay.
I finally accepted.
Oh no, that's such good news. Good. So
But in your
that's
time,
unexpected.
In your time, it was a very interesting period. It was a rather, how shall I say, an intense period of manifesting things.
Yes.
We planted the outer gardens.
Yes.
And,
It
What
was
was your
it was an
experience?
interesting period, and it was I don't know, one of the things that strike me in retrospect when I meet people that I worked with at that time, and there's quite a few still around. For example, Francois Grenier and Naraka, who came to Orville. Naraka, that is, pretty soon after me, and he stayed a bit in the place that I stayed in at that time, not Abri anymore, different place. So we were friends at that time, still are. So I remember working with these guys, pushing wheelbarrows around, getting compost from the village, and talking. And we, at that time, had not a shadow of a doubt that we would reach the supramental consciousness in this life. That was like, for us, it was a clear thing, done deal. We're here, and okay, that's what.
fantastic, yeah. God.
So we weren't quite familiar, let us say, with the nitty-gritty of it all and the immenseness of the task, and I think we all had to sort of revise our expectations. But in those days, it was like it was very simple and clear. As it is, things turn out different, but that's okay, and I think one has to say no regrets, and we were, there was enthusiasm, there was very little, how to say, doubt, and the time of conflict hadn't really yet so much. I think the conflict was there already, and there was differing opinions between Roger and Piero, but this hadn't trickled down really to us. We were there doing, whatever we were told to do, and we were happy with that.
When did the conflict with Navajata begin? Because Fred talked a lot about that.
Yeah, that was mid-70s, I would say.
Mid-70s. Huh? So you were there during that time.
I was there
Yes,
during that
yes,
time, yes.
yes.
So, yeah, that took obviously precedence over the discussions at Matra Mandir about how the Matra Mandir was to be built and who was in charge and which design we should follow. At that time, it became a much more essential, as it were. The feeling was that the very fabric of Oroville was being threatened.
Yes.
And so I have to say, because having a lot of contact over the years with Fred, him being my uncle, obviously I was quite. I was in a place where I would hear most of what was going on, and the. My feeling is that I wasn't in the forefront, though. I wasn't in the, proactive revolutionary guard, as it were.
Mm-hmm.
I was standing behind watching it. Sometimes finding it difficult to understand exactly if that, how to say, fervent revolutionary character was really the best way to go about it. But in the end, I guess it's a matter of conjecture. You can't say if it would have worked differently or not. What happened, and I think there was a certain guidance, quite discernible at that time. So we have to accept it as that.
Do you feel today that Mother or Sri Aurobindo's force is still with Orville?
Without a doubt. I think Oroville would have collapsed if that support and that force wasn't there. It would have collapsed long ago.
Agree.
And so whether or not I can tap into that in my personal life all the time is a different matter. But as far as Oroville is concerned, yes, it's there.
And your personal life, when did you get married?
I got
and have a daughter.
Well, the thing is, I met my first wife, Veronica, pretty soon after arriving in Orville, maybe a year after.
Oh.
So we got together. She was she had already lived in Orville 5 years, and had 2 children of her own, Niloro and Pooja, with Stephen Walton, who came from the ashram.
I remember Stephen.
So they had separated, and so yeah, Veronica and I, we got together and stayed together for about 20 years and had a daughter, Orada.
Oh. Together.
So when we separated in some time around 93, I would say, 93, Veronica went back to Germany. There was at one point a bit of a talk, why don't you come and join me there? But I never felt I wanted to go back to Germany. So
she was German.
She was German. She is German. She lives there in Berlin. And lives very close to my grandson Suryan, Arada's son, helping him to, sort things out. He's 22 years now. So I'm obviously a granddad, but my grandson's already 22 years old. Yeah. So then I met my present wife, Gabby, in 96 in Oroville, or 95. She knows those dates better than I do. And she came to visit her friend, and we met a few times, and there was a, obviously a attraction, and she had to go back to Germany to sort things out. I at that time had a job offer in England with my friend Gerhard, old Aurovillian also, who used to be with Bobby in, you know Gerhard. So I went to England for a few months, Gabby went to Germany, then came back here, and we ended up getting married in 1999 in Munich. And then in 2000 our daughter Marissa was born. And not so long ago, about 3 weeks ago, I brought her to Utrecht, where she is now studying liberal arts in the college there.
But you are solid in Orville.
I'm solid here, yes, for sure. Yeah.
Do you come to the ashram at all?
I do. Not so often. I came for my birthday on the 16th of September, and so went to Sri Aurobindo's room. That is always a very beautiful experience.
Yes.
Different every time, and yeah, it's. I don't come that often, but sometimes when I'm in Pondi and do stuff, and I don't know, have to wait for something, I go to the Samadhi, sit there for a bit. But I don't know people in the ashram, so it's not like I could visit somebody or have a point of contact there.
How do you see Oroville today? Its evolution, its population increase?
I see Oroville today, I would say the word that comes to mind is relevant. Oroville is very relevant in the world today. And for me, Oroville makes sense only in the context of the world at large, not as a bubble, sort of self-contained. There's obviously a point that a lot of people immediately focus on, and that is the fact that there hasn't been as much growth as one would have hoped for or expected. There are several reasons for that. But at the same time, this is, I think, can also be a very protective can act as a very protective sort of measure. If we were more dispersed and had more people and more growth to deal with, I think it would take away from essentials that have to do with the very character of Oroville and the things that Oroville wants to manifest. And I believe that the secret is that these things have to manifest somehow in synchronicity, the inner and the outer, and you can't just rush ahead with the outer development at all costs, invest, and neglect at the same time this inner dimension, without which the whole thing is totally useless anyway.
Exactly.
So I have it's not a big job, but I'm working with a volunteer organization which is called Medvetz. It's organized by the German government, and it's organized also by the Orville International Germany. They're the organization that actually sends the volunteers, about between 16 and 19 or 20 volunteers every year. They come for a year and work in Oroville. So I've done this now for 8 years, and the interesting thing is really that that the contact with these young people, and fact is, at my age, you don't normally get into contact with young people, other than very superficial sort of conversations in the queue of the solar kitchen, maybe. The contact with these young people that come from Germany, we are there to show them around, and we're there in case of them needing anything, is first of all beneficial because for me, because it allows me to see things through their eyes, and to see Oroville and the new kind of experiences they're making here through their eyes. So that kind of always puts me back into contact with my own sort of time, 50 years ago. And the other thing is that I see how much they appreciate Oroville, and how much they appreciate what is being done here in so many ways. Not just, obviously, a lot of them come with a very high standard of ecology. Many of them are vegetarian. Quite a few of them are actually vegan. It always poses a bit of a problem. They're very conscious about sustainability in their lives, and they understand that these are the challenges that their generation has to deal with, and they're far ahead. And when I compare the state that I was at that time, these guys are way ahead of what we were able to bring to the plate.
And how old are they?
They're 20.
20?
Yeah, they're 20. They're more or less exactly the age I was when I came here. So it's for me, that's a nice kind of yardstick to measure, the relevance of Oroville today.
Yes.
And the nice thing is that a lot of them, after they finish their year, quite a few actually, go back to Germany. Generally, what they do is they start their studies. They go to university. It's basically a voluntary year that they do, because that they've just finished their baccalaureate, and that's like a year where they sort things out, figure out what they want to do, and what they want to study. Many of them are a bit, undecided. And a voluntary year always looks good on your CV. So,
have any of them come back?
And they come
to
back.
Orville?
That's what I was going to say. A lot of them, they go back after the year, and they come back here. And I almost get the feeling, I say, well, why did you come here? Well, to see my friends. But actually, you have the feeling that they come back because something in them feels there's still something they haven't quite grasped, and they want to figure out what is that. And that's what they come back for.
And do they stay for a while?
They stay for a while, a few months. Quite a few of them come several times over the years. 3 of them have actually settled here.
Oh.
So, yeah.
This must be very interesting for you.
It's very interesting. It's very nice, and I'm quite happy with that work.
Do you oversee the whole thing?
No, we're a team of 4 of us, and
may I know their names?
Yeah, sure. There is Karin from Discipline, and Gabi and Jürgen. Those 3, Jürgen from Quiet. Those 3 are coordinators. That is to say, they are mostly in touch with the German counterparts. My wife Gabi, she is the one that deals, before the new batch comes, with all the visa things that need to be sorted out here, letters of recommendation. Our organization in Oroville, which is called SAVI, which deals with volunteers, they need to have all that information. That's what she deals with. Once they arrive here, there is the introduction week, and that's when the others take over a bit. I go cycling with them, show them all the cycle paths in Orville, all the different projects. I visit it one by one, because by the time they come here, they've already decided which project they want to join, because they've already done 2 seminars in Germany, preparing them for the year here, and they've already selected their project. So we move around, show them all the different projects, the whole group, so they understand what Oroville is, and then basically we're on standby if they have questions, if things happen. Mostly that's minor scraps with the motorcycle. Then we get sudden panic calls. I don't know, they've eaten something wrong, and there's some food poisoning, or this, that, or the other. But knock, knock, knock. In all these years, nothing really bad has happened, and a few visits to the hospital, but that was it. Yeah, so that's from when you ask me how do you feel about Oroville today. I would say that's one of the things that really is also a source of renewed enthusiasm that I'm contacting through these young kids.
Do you see progress in the housing situation?
Not as much as I would like to see. I think this is one of the areas where we have been not making sufficient progress, really. That has to do with a lot of different aspects. One is the whole sort of socioeconomic planning side that we have neglected over the years, over decades, really. The interrelation of housing, of work, of financial support for the inhabitants of the city. All of these things are right now the result of, I would say, what one could call ad hoc development, rather than a planned and well thought out sort of development plan. So certainly one of the outward reasons why we haven't really managed to significantly increase our population. If the visa regulations are one reason, it's not so easy to come to Oroville when you come from the outside of India. The other is economic reasons, unless you are somebody who has a regular income, like let's say if you're retired and you have your regular income, it's for young people practically impossible to come to Oroville. If you're a young professional, maybe with a family, the costs to come here are phenomenal. Not like they were at the time when I came. I just basically packed my bags and got here. Nowadays you have to bring the whole family over, look at things, make a decision whether or not you feel that you want to come. Then you go back again. At the same time, you apply for your letter of recommendation. You already had your visit with the entry group, and that is if things go well. If you manage to get an appointment, then you get your letter of recommendation. At that point, you have to basically quit your job, whatever it is, leave the place you're staying in, your house, basically cut all the bridges. And you're by no way sure that this is going to work. This is like a huge act of faith that you're working on. And then you come here, you don't have income for 1 year, but you still have to maintain somehow yourself and your family. Find housing, which is very difficult for newcomers. And then at the end of the year, after again meeting with the entry group, you're finally declared an Aurovillian. So that's like a lot of people look at this game plan and say, sorry, that there's too many ifs in there. I can't just risk
my whole life,
my life and that of my wife and children,
yes.
On an off chance that it's going to work.
Well, it's good to hear you say this, and people have to hear these things because Oroville is in an evolutionary phase and always will be.
Yeah, and what we need is young people, young families.
Absolutely.
We have a lot of retired people, and nothing against retired people. I'm retired myself, or at least in that age, even though I'm not yet retired. But yeah, that's where the strength comes from the young people. Absolutely. And the enthusiasm and the skill level and skill sets they bring. That's what we need. Yeah.
Something to be worked on.
Definitely.
Andy, it's been wonderful talking with you.
Well, thanks, Nara. Thanks for giving me the occasion, and I take great pleasure in coming.